The next item is public comments on non-agenda items. Is there anyone here or on Zoom?
I'd like to make a comment, if that's possible.
Yes, if you don't mind, for the record, could you identify yourself and your address?
Sure. So, my name is Philip Furs. I'm at 8 Blossom Lane,
Mhm.
and I will keep this tight as I can. It's under 2 minutes. So first of all, Board of Selectmen, thank you for taking my comment. Since my last comment at the BOS hearing and the committee meeting, I've spoken with Scott Horsley, who's the consultant to the town for the water project. I've read the town water report, spoken to other residents, and met with Chuck Donald. I've tried to edify myself as best I can. So with that said, I have a couple of points I want to make. So just the Board of Selectmen, this is obviously a complicated subject. So my only thing is please dig deeper into this issue and don't rush into a conclusion just because you've been presented with a recommendation. That's point one. Two is, like, in my opinion, the increase in water rates of almost 3 to 4x in a new tier 3 and tier 4 of proposed levels is excessive. Why jack rates so excessively and so fast? If intent on curbing water usage, why not educate the town like it's been ongoing, raise rates at a more moderate level, and reassess? There is no imminent threat from what I have read and with whom I've spoken with. Second point or third point is add more tiers. Penalizing a family of 6 for being efficient and popping into tier 3 doesn't make a lot of sense. You can actually consume less, 65 gallons per day, so below the Manchester average, and with the state, and you would fall into tier 3 at 65 gallons per day per person. And yes, I've converted this to cubic feet, and that's the basic math. You need a more gradual increase of 68 tiers, for example. My point 4, don't lower rates for the lowest tier. That doesn't make any sense. Scott Horsley, by the way, agrees with that. He did not agree with that recommendation by the committee. I'm not sure what we're accomplishing with this. I understand the rationale, but I don't think it makes a lot of sense. And finally, 5, consider potential alternatives. You're really trying to discourage excessive outdoor usage during the summer. Why not more seriously consider summer versus winter rates? Also, it seems like you could install a meter to capture the outdoor reading, if I understood Chuck correctly, although it might take some time, 1 to 2 years, but then you could differentiate between indoor and outdoor. But if I butchered that, I apologize. And then finally, while I appreciate all the work the task force has done, I would like to say that conservation for conservation's sake isn't a standalone virtue. There needs to be a clear outcome that benefits the town conserving, in this case, water. While I think a case can be made to conserve, it's not completely an open and shut. Therefore, while taking steps in that direction of conservation makes sense, making the penalties excessive and steep at the outset don't match our current state of affairs. That's my comment. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comment. Is there anyone else in the public or on Zoom who would like to make a comment? Okay, hearing no one saying that they see anyone on Zoom, I will assume that there isn't. Our next agenda item is an ADA Advisory Committee interview with Caitlin Epps. Caitlin, would you like to make a short presentation of why you want to be on the ADA committee?
Sure. So I grew up in this town on Old Neck Road and went away to college and business school and came back. And in living in Boston, I had my second child who has an ultra rare disease and has slowly progressed to being more and more disabled. And as a result of having her, being part of the school system and whatnot, I've met many other families with children with disabilities in the area, and I've become more aware of aging population and the needs that they have, as well as kind of just people with other differences and what they need. And when I look at our town and how amazing it is and all the resources we have, I do realize how many limitations there are, how much more attention could be paid towards ADA and kind of raising awareness, teaching people about these things and finding ways to be collaborative with the other projects that are going on, you know, rather than just kind of coming when I see areas that could be improved, really wanting to be a part of something and making this town more accessible, especially, you know, reading the master plan and seeing the age of the town increasing, making sure that those thoughts of accessibility and universal design are incorporated. And so at the state level, we have a bill going before the State House on September 12th for imposing or improving some of the laws so that there's universal changing stations in all new or significantly renovated buildings. And so when I figured, if I can do this at that level, I can probably help my town. And so just really wanted to kind of become a part of it, be a way for other people to get their voices out into the town that, you know, otherwise might not participate in things.
Thank you. Becky, do you have any questions?
I do. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for volunteering and just having, usually when in our town, given the demographic, the ADA tends to be more focused for my age and around. So I think that what you could bring would provide a much broader picture. And the biggest question I have is, do you have the time to be able to get into this?
Yes, I think that's a completely valid question. I say no to quite a few things, except for those that I feel like have a meaningful purpose on my life and my children's life, and you know, this is certainly a priority. I work a more flexible job so that I have the chance to do things that require a little bit more heavy lifting at various points in time, and can kind of push things aside. And so, yes, I think that I have the capacity to take it on.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Brian?
No, I've known Caitlin since she was a pup.
That is true.
So I applaud her stepping up.
Kathy?
Just one question. You mentioned that, you know, because of your situation, you have some ideas in mind as to what improvements, you know, some improvements could look like. Would you mind sharing a couple, just so we can understand what might be on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest one that I was actually so impressed by the town with was the golf cart to the beach, because that was something where, you know, I think that is quite prohibitive for many people. Some other ideas that I had were having a pathway, little things like that, having a pathway that connects the handicap parking spots to various places within Masconomo Park. And finding ways to just signal to parents, you know, I know resurfacing a playground is more expensive, but signaling certain things might be more closely designated for wheelchair users. Also, providing some surface alternatives for some of the areas where social things happen, just so that if people are using walkers or need more opportunities to sit, that they exist, because standing for long periods of time and having to carry your own chairs to things like the music event can be difficult for many people. And then just kind of also educating on the idea of how little things like handing back a credit card to a person who might be visually impaired rather than sliding it across the counter. Or, you know, making sure that you're speaking clearly, because there are non-monetary things that we can do to help companies here service people better where it might be a not so visible disability. And so how do we improve the consistency of service?
So, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
John?
I don't have any questions. I just want to thank you for volunteering, and I know that the committee would certainly benefit from your firsthand knowledge of and ideas that you have to make our town a little more ADA friendly. It's great. Thank you.
I can only thank you for stepping forward. I have followed bits of your activities in town and been very impressed, so I'm delighted that you're involved.
Thank you.
Anyone else, would you like, Beth, would
I
you like?
just would like to say that while the ADA committee hasn't met to say whether we would like her on, we know that for several years now, we've been looking for somebody, especially somebody who has firsthand experience with ADA issues. So we are really happy to have someone come forward to join our committee. I hope you appoint her.
Is there any further discussion?
Motion to approve Caitlin Epps for the position on the ADA Advisory Committee through June 2026, or to expire on June 30th, 2026.
Second.
Meeting ready? Becky,
Absolutely.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
John says yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I hope we keep you very busy.
I think you're probably already there, but.
Thank you, Beth, very much.
Thank you.
As usual, I have skipped a step, which is the chairman's report and action items, and the chairman has nothing to report. But we should look at the action items. Today we are dealing with, okay, that was for June, and we're not ready for it yet. Open meeting agenda is on our agenda. The city master plan is on our agenda for today. The flagpole is on our agenda for today. The board of library trustees membership is on our agenda for today. And that's it of the things that we're supposed to be catching up on. Is there anything else that anyone would like to add to the action items?
Yes, I think we ought to put the Boston Post case on that. That should be sometime, in fact, for the next meeting.
Okay,
I do have, oh, I'm sorry, Greg, go ahead.
All right, either way, the compensation study is likely not to be ready on the 18th. It's a little bit of a delay, but hopefully for the October meeting.
Did we need to discuss anything about the joint committees that for school budget? I know we've got something coming up.
there's a 5 committee meeting scheduled for the 19th.
Mhm.
At the beginning of the school's budget process. And the idea is to get both finance committees, both boards of selectmen and the school committee together to talk about what the school is anticipating, what the towns are feeling now at this point, early on in their budget process. And it's going to be a very large meeting, but that's the only way we saw, to get everybody involved early and hear hear and speak to each other. So,
Okay.
is there anything else? You know,
No, I
bring
know
your
we have a
knitting.
meeting coming up, but,
Yeah.
other than just reiterating that at this point,
Mhm.
will we be discussing anything on the 18th, or will it just,
So yes, so for the 18th, it would be helpful for you
okay,
in preparation for the 19th to talk a bit about sort of globally budget parameters for school versus town,
okay,
et cetera.
thank you.
I just have a question
Sure.
about the actions. The action at the bottom, the parking discussion, is that the continuation of the discussion we had last time? Because I took an action to request some feedback from Downtown Improvement and Bike and Ped.
Mhm.
And they're gonna be starting those discussions in September, at their September meeting. So I just wanna understand what to set as an expectation. When do we want their feedback back? If we're not gonna talk about it till February, that's fine. I wanted to understand when we would like to hear back from them.
So I think we're talking about putting off till February just because this season is coming to a close, so that changes weren't gonna be implemented right now. But having feedback any time between now and then is helpful. So, I would say over the next couple of months.
Okay, so I'll make sure we get some feedback this
That'd
fall,
be great.
and then, okay,
Yep.
that's fine, just wanted to know, thank you.
Okay. In that case, if we're done with action items, we are reviewing, the next item is review the plans for commercial fishing boats at Morse Pier. Is Brian on the call?
I don't see him, no. I know that he was planning on that. But in his absence, I can kick us off. A while back, I'm forgetting exactly when, we gave Brian the green light to pursue some design work to expand the commercial fishing pier to incorporate some dockage for slips for the commercial fishing boats. And so he was able to secure some grant funding from the Seaport Economic Development Council to pay for the design work. And in your package are the plans that have been developed by our engineering company, Foth Engineers. And the plans show seven slips that would be added to a new set of floats that basically parallel the seawall. Masco just, I guess that's a little bit to the north, maybe east of Morse Pier. And so the plan calls for those seven slips, and then there's also a small connector float to the existing Reed Park transient docks. And the idea is to create a walkway that people can enjoy the waterfront, sort of up close and personal. There have been some concerns expressed about the aesthetics of that connecting float, given the height of the pilings that have to be installed based on Army Corps and FEMA regulations for storm surge, et cetera. In this particular case, my understanding is it does not add pilings, that connector, there are pilings at either end. And so whether or not the connector is there isn't causing additional pilings to be installed. But again, that's a decision that can be made at a later date. I think it makes sense to pursue the final design and permitting as presented. And then you can always decide at a later time whether or not you want to proceed with the connector float or not. But this is basically a check-in to make sure you're comfortable with how the design is shaping up, and before they pursue the permitting, wanted to make sure that the plans were meeting your expectations and that you were okay with it proceeding.
Comments?
I have a question. So there are some pilings involved here,
Yes.
and I can't quite see where they are on the graphics. I don't,
Yeah, they're small black dots. They are hard to pick out.
Small black dots.
You would be hard pressed to see them without enlarging this.
but I assume they're
So
kind
there
of.
are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I think 6 new, 6, 7, 8, 9 altogether, up to 9.
Okay, and they're all on that one side.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. So
Yes.
they're,
I'm not, so I said 7, I'm not sure if the finger, they must have them at the ends of each of those, so that would be 9.
I see 3 on that one
Yeah,
extension.
at the ends of each.
I see them on the end.
So I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, I get 9 altogether.
They're the big circles?
No, the little
Little
dots.
dot.
Little
No,
dots.
they're small
Little-
dots.
Okay, right, they,
The dots, John.
yeah, I'm seeing dots. All right, but nevertheless, those are kind of off to the side. If one were to stand at the end of the channel, you really wouldn't be seeing the pilings looking out into the,
If you're standing on Beach Street,
yes,
yeah,
on Beach
along the
Street.
fence there, sort of midway,
Yeah,
looking
midway,
straight
they're
out.
not necessarily,
You
You're basically,
Three.
right,
they're not in the line of sight.
they're not in the line of sight, direct, I mean,
Well-
they're gonna see them. I don't wanna
Okay.
sugarcoat that, you will see them, and they'll be very similar in height, they will be the same height basically as what's there at Reed Park.
To that,
Well, they-
yeah, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
excuse me. To that point, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
All the backlash when they're talking about the original Reed, the docks and the pilings for Reed Park, there was a lot of pushback on that. And now it's part of the landscape, and I can see where
Mhm.
the new, with this expansion, the new docks go, that'll be just part of the landscape itself.
Similar
as Tux.
to
Yeah.
Tux, the
Yeah.
new floats at Tux, they had the new pilings put in, those are much taller. Those, there weren't any there before, they were just all anchored to the bottom, which is not allowed anymore. So yes, it's a change, and there's some adjustment period, but it does seem to blend into the background. Over
Yeah,
time.
they're on the sides. With regard to Tux, I think they're a little more obvious, but Tux is populated mostly in the summer. Not too many people walk by there in the winter
True,
when the pilings are, that's all there are. But here, this is the center of town,
yep.
so.
Are these wooden pilings or, steel?
I believe they'd be the steel pilings.
Okay.
I'll double check that, but that's my understanding.
Don't
I
they
think
have to be for,
They have wooden pilings at Reed's because there is no bottom there. The metal pilings at Tux.
Oh, so they are wood at Reed?
They are
I was
wood at Reed.
figuring that. So I think they would match what is
One
at
more
Reed
piece.
now.
Yeah. And probably they would want to do it consistently for the same
Yes.
reasons, but.
Yeah.
How many fishing boats, how many commercial fishermen have boats in Manchester?
14, 18 in that.
How
in
are
that
we going to
range.
decide who gets a slip?
Need to defer to Brian on that one. I'm not sure. He's got a plan for that, whether it's a lottery or first come, first serve. I'd have to check with him.
Auction them off?
do we, and would this new configuration increase the numbers of commercial fishing boats?
It's possible because being on a slip is much more desirable for some. Certainly makes it easier for access and lugging gear
Mm-hmm.
and your catching and all of that, so.
I once had an office at Forty Beach, and in the early winter, it was fun watching the fishermen go out in their dinghies paddling with snow shovels.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Fun for you to watch.
Heat of your office.
Yeah.
Okay, now, you know what we're dealing with.
Any more questions?
I do, it's, the shellfishing area inside where the one extension, the connection would be. Are they allowed to shellfish there? And if so, does anybody at this time?
It's currently not allowed, that's a potential. So we don't have, we're in the process of trying to reestablish some shellfishing beds. And this area, I don't believe is the target area. It's a potential, but it's not part of the current target area.
Okay. I think it'd be nice to help the commercial fishing people out. Maybe get some more in.
Right.
Yeah.
Assume that the floats, these boats, at least if not the finger piers, would be open to the public. This isn't something where you have a gate and only the people who have their boats there
Correct, it would be open,
for walking.
yes.
Just one question.
Now, whether or not there might be a gate on the fingers leading out to the commercial boats, I mean, that could be, but the main floats would be available.
Timeframes. This, would this be running concurrent with the extension of Reed's?
That would be the ideal timing. So permitting, you know, if you're lucky, it's a year long, it takes a year. Often it takes a little longer. But ideally, again, this work is late fall, winter work. So if it was if things progressed according to plan, then it would be next fall into next winter.
Is this easier permitting than, say, where Tux is? I'm just curious, that's,
About the same.
okay.
About the same.
Right,
I'm good.
Kathy? John?
It's fine.
I'm happy.
Yeah.
Should we have a,
A motion is fine to, you know, proceed as presented. That would solidify
yes,
your discussion.
then I am looking for
Yeah, motion?
a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve proceeding with the permitting process for this, for the commercial fishing floats.
Second.
Is that the form?
that
that you'd like to
satisfactory?
have?
That's fine, that's fine.
Further discussion? Becky,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy, Ann says yes.
John says yes.
Okay. The next item on the agenda, is, I'm looking for the,
Open meeting agenda date?
Discussion items.
yes, and now we're on discussion items. We've had people here. I'm trying to suggest that we move the presentation of the facilities plan up for the benefit of the people who are here. Is any objection to that? Fine, then
Okay.
let's have the facility.
Right. Well, I
Yes,
guess
I'll
I'm
start. You start,
Yeah.
we're just gonna sit here and we don't have to stand.
Yeah, so I think Greg has the presentation that we'll talk from, but just kind of recap where we're at. You know, last February, we endeavored on this facility master plan. These guys, this is Tetra Tech, Chris Fuller, Paul Parsons, who were here last time in May, where we kind of were on kind of very beginning, but in that, now we're here before you to discuss the draft that we sent out last week. So there's, you know, some substantial recommendations in there, but I think it's all grounded in things that everybody already knew, just more formalized in maybe some formal order and other things, but I'll let Chris discuss that in the quick presentation. And obviously, if there's any questions or any other things, we're here to answer questions.
We good?
Yeah, I'm getting a strange message that my meeting is going to end in 10 minutes. I don't understand that. I've never seen that before.
So make it quick.
That's
Why don't we
really
just
gonna
skip
be
the questions and we'll be done?
I think they said something in the other room.
So,
Greg, I think I might be the host.
What was that?
I think I might be the host.
Okay. I just don't want
I understand.
I don't want to die in the middle here.
Now I have 9
How do
minutes.
I give you control?
I'll talk real fast.
Just need to find. Right.
It's hard to transition out of vacation mood sometimes.
The upsides will be home before time. Just saying. You wanna go to the group, don't you?
How do I give you control?
Just if you click on my name,
That's the thermostat, I think.
or Manchester, I guess I'm the Manchester by the C2.
I was waiting for Deb to step up and do it.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Are you turning it on?
No, it has to do with host.
Did you turn it on?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Brian,
On what?
did you just
Okay,
I just turned it
here we
on.
go.
Hold on, I'm getting there.
turn it off again?
It doesn't matter.
It's
Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Okay,
Sorry.
I will just cue you, Greg, to,
Yeah, just
to
give me-
forward.
Yep,
So just to reiterate, I'm Chris Kohler, and that's Bob Parsons, and we're with Tetra Tech, and we're here to discuss the facilities master plan. And as Chuck said, we were back here in May to give you an introduction. Now we're a little bit further along, so we're gonna give you another update. So, next slide, please. There we go. So to develop a master plan, we basically look at all of the town's departments and commissions and, try and understand what their needs are, what their wants are. And then we use that information to develop a strategy to give you those needs moving into the future. So we have done that. We have talked to most departments, and then as we presented last time, we looked through an inventory of 262 properties within the town. And now we've prepared some conceptual plans and some ideas on how to move forward. So this is an update for that. Next slide, please. So we looked at all of the departments listed, plus probably a couple more, and we met with most people. But what we're going to do here is we're going to concentrate on what I call the big rocks. You want to put the big rocks in your jar first, and there are basically 5 big rocks and 5 big facilities in town. One being the Department of Public Works Maintenance Garage. The police department is the second, the fire department a third, the town hall itself a fourth, and the wastewater treatment plant would be 5 big rocks that we should be kind of focused on. Not that other projects aren't important, but we're just gonna try and focus on them,
Okay,
if you
so,
will.
To interrupt you, I'm sorry.
Okay, no, please do at any time.
Water treatment plant is not a rock?
Well, it's a big rock, but it's kind of
Stable.
it's stable. It's a stable rock right now. But we can talk about that too. So if we go to the next slide, but we're going to start with the Department of Public Works, and I don't know if everybody, I'm assuming, has been down there. It is an aging facility. It's over 50 years old. A lot of the equipment is outdated. A lot of the buildings are in need of repair. Building codes have gotten a little bit more stringent since that was built. So the real question is whether to renovate or rebuild. In this particular case, to renovate on the site while you're trying to continue to maintain the operation of the DPW, it will be pretty significant. And after looking at the town as a whole, we think it's probably better to find a new location for the DPW, build a new DPW, and then move DPW to that location, rather than try and build a new one on the site that it's on. So, next slide, please. The police department, again, we all know it's downstairs in this building. Also, a 40-plus-year-old building. According to the previous studies that we reviewed, there's a recommendation that they need about 7,000 feet. They have about 4,500 square feet right now. And that is for things like a women's locker room, women's restroom, handicap accessibility, separation of certain interview rooms, things that I don't want to get into all of the specifics, but one big thing is that a lot of the department is located on the bottom floor of this building, the walkout basement, as I would call it, and that is in a flood zone. And, you know, the lieutenant's office, the prison cells, storage is down there, which is files, the guns and ammunition, the Council on Aging office is down there, as is the harbor master's office. So those are all in a floodplain. So keep that in mind, that
How much of the
4,500.
square feet are in the flood?
I don't know the exact, but it's about 2,000 square feet. So
Okay, less than half.
less than half is down there. Again, we have this idea of renovate or rebuild. In this situation, having so much area in a flood zone, we would also advocate to build a new facility outside of the flood zone. There are ways to do that, and we can get to that, but there are ways to fortify this building, but there are also just building a new police station elsewhere.
Would it be possible just to abandon the basement floor?
It's possible. We would have to expand another part of town hall, like put an addition
Or
on,
perhaps move other offices out of town?
or move offices
Yeah,
out.
I might also add, you may want to repurpose those spaces to be less or more resilient to flooding, so you wouldn't necessarily put mechanical equipment or other vital parts of the structure.
Mhm.
You wouldn't put valuable files in those types of facilities down there. Things that would be, I guess, less impacted by an event of occurrence, I think is probably more the direction we're going in, or at least it's concept of it.
Time to go home.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh,
Never happened.
Good night, please.
Are we under the right account, I mean, it
no,
ended
we
at,
have to end.
the free version ends at 45 minutes,
So,
I think, after
Is
the start.
there, does someone take care of like
The bill,
yeah?
that's what I'm wondering, the free version ends at 45 minutes after the meeting starts.
Something expired is all.
Look, we aren't even at 45 minutes yet.
Well, if they started the Zoom
Yeah.
before we got
Yeah, we
in,
started the Zoom 5 to 10 minutes early.
did we pay the
Can
bills?
we
My question.
continue, or can we, or do we have to stop?
We have to stop.
No, we should be able to just bring right back up.
No, I mean, he's gonna stop his presentation,
Oh,
just
yeah.
until we
Yeah.
log
Yeah.
on,
Okay.
yes, yeah,
So we're gonna get another 45 minutes? This is gonna happen again?
Okay.
probably.
The question
It's like a parking meter.
is, can we actually continue since the login information that we had?
So can everybody else join from their phones?
I'm trying right now.
I see everybody else still there.
You back?
No, I'm not on, but I think it's
One more second, guys.
I'll just, whatever, I need to Zoom right now.
I think we're good to go.
Is everybody, is there anybody on Zoom who we can check with to make sure that they can hear us?
Sure, Nate, can you hear us?
Yep, I can.
Okay.
We're back.
You're back.
We're back?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, we're back, and we're talking about the police department.
Right.
And
Anybody else have questions about?
I have some general questions, but I can wait till the presentation, unless you'd rather we interrupt as we go.
I would prefer to have a discussion
Okay.
personally than me droning on here. I'm not very good at it.
Okay, all right, so, just in general, I mean, the document, we all had the document sent to us. I really think the narrative was very well done. I've seen a lot of these, and, you know, you provided good information so that we understand why, you know, some of these recommendations are what they are. But having seen a lot of these, I do have some suggestions for the next draft, okay? So, in order to, for the residents, you know, we're talking about some big dollars here, right? So that we need to make sure the residents understand these recommendations. I think it would be helpful to clearly denote the assumptions and the requirements in like a bulleted list, okay, for each of the areas. There's a paragraph here, wants and needs, but the wants and the needs are all mixed together in the narrative. We really need to separate out the wants from the needs. And I think a bulleted list of the requirements that you've been presented with and also the assumptions that you're using to make your recommendations would be helpful. Because I think that's what the board and the residents are going to be debating. Okay, we say we need 7,000 square feet for the police. What requirements are that, you know, is that based on? So that's what we're gonna be pushing on, so it really does help to separate that clearly out. Just from a general optics standpoint, I've received feedback already from some residents that the way we're talking about some of our facilities, it seems like we're just trying to make the town employees happy. And it's a weird comment, it came out, it's just something that I had not a weird comment, that's not the right phrase. It was a comment I didn't expect. So, you know, we talk about these buildings one by one, but the residents are looking at the whole integrated picture, okay? So there's a reason we're making these investments, like the DPW, it's to protect our assets, right? There's a public safety issue, you know, so I think we've got to use some language in here that resonates with the resident. What's in it for them? That's the question that we should be clearly answering. Because otherwise, what we see in some of the recommendations is increasing in square footage for garages or office space. And just having, like I said, been in the corporate world, that doesn't sell at all. And in fact, a lot of organizations that our residents may be working for, they're downsizing their facility space. So we're coming at the taxpayers from a different perspective and saying we need to increase some space with some very good reason, but we've got to get really crisp on the narrative here, because I think it could be easily misinterpreted. And we don't want to go down a negative path here. So I just think starting with that clear assumptions, clear requirements, and we can all poke at what's really a want versus a need. And then in my last comment is just, I think buried in the comments are some integrated scenarios, right? Let's move, one recommendation is move DPW to School Street, then you put public safety. You know, there's a whole set of moves that's really one scenario, okay? But you have to read lots of different comments in lots of different pages to really understand what you're getting at. So I just think pulling out some of the highlights of, you've got some integrated scenarios in here that we could look at. Moving DPW is one, that might free up some town assets for either resale or whatever, but the document looks at each individual piece and not necessarily the whole scenario that might be really helpful for a resident to understand before they agree to pay for any of this. Because part of freeing up the town, some town assets could be revenue opportunities to offset some of these costs, right? So I just a little bit of feedback there at a general level. But you know, the information's here, but it's, a resident would have to work really hard, I think, to understand a lot of that.
Can I
Yeah.
tag on to
Yeah.
that? With what Kathy's saying, and just to explain a little bit of why, we're finding people are far more interested in really deep diving learning. However, we still need to distill the most salient points down. And and that's what we're trying to do here is make it a much easier way to have dialogue and accurate information that gets disseminated as opposed to supposition.
Oh, actually, and another, just to add on to that, when the residents look at this, it's gonna be in the context of a lot of other things we're gonna be asking them for money for, like we just mentioned, water rates, or the schools need a new building, that's not included in here. So just the context of other things that we may be asking them to pay for, all the more reason to get as crisp bulleted list on some salient points to help them absorb what we're trying to talk about.
And all the more reasons to, as you said, give the pluses. This is not, we're not just simply taking money, we're saving money on properly housing equipment, on possibly trading spaces. And I don't think we've done enough of that in the past. So putting that in the information as well, I to Kathy's point, I think is critical.
John?
Yeah. I thought it was pretty clear.
Yeah.
Okay, there are a couple of spots, I mean, for instance, when it's comment about some of the specifications that justify more space or more this or more that. For instance, the police department, you said, hey, additional required improvements, you listed them, you put them right down there, and that's why it's gotta go from 4,000 to 7,500. You need women's facilities, you need this, you need that, and a lot of these things are requirements of the state, okay? But you didn't do that with every one. Police is pretty straightforward, you happen to have it up there, and I'm looking at it right here.
Well,
So it's, it'd be better to do that. And the other thing that kind of struck me is, yeah, it's all kind of put together, but each of these projects is standalone. Okay? You can do step one, and ideally we want to do step one and then do step two and then do step three and do step four. But we don't know if the town's gonna have the stomach for, we gotta get another $20 million bond, it's gonna cost this. You just prioritize it, and I think it would be better if you probably, at some point, kind of put them, listed each one and say, here's what the bottom line is for each one, and kind of the time frame that it would take, and not necessarily put a date down, just say year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, you're spending $20 million. And for this one, et cetera. You did in your summary, you said, okay, let's do, maybe it was the big 5 in your summary, where you said, okay, this year we're gonna start this, next year we're gonna start that, and the third year we're gonna start the next one and start the planning, et cetera. In an ideal world, that might fit together. I don't, I don't know that everybody would say that it was a for instance. I think you put it out as a for instance and say this is how it might work out going sequentially. But it would be good if you could make each project kind of standalone. Here is the cost. And if that specific project doesn't have the specifics that Kathy and Becky had mentioned, make sure you've got it there, and then this is why it's gonna cost this. So, but otherwise, I thought it was, I wouldn't say easy reading, but it was pretty good reading.
It was easy to follow.
Yeah,
I'll
it
give you
was.
that.
It flowed very well.
Yep.
It really did.
I think I'd like to just touch on a couple like major concepts. So I think this microloan is definitely worth adding for sure. And I can see the future back and forth that we'll have with residents and public forums like this to discuss. I think one of the major things that, a couple that we discussed on the project side that I think came through well in here, and I just want to reiterate for tonight's discussion, but one is the climate resiliency aspect of this. no matter what we say or do about some of the facilities, they are going to be in the floodplain. That's not gonna change, that's only gonna get worse. And so it's not so much a question of, do we need the 7,500 feet or not? It's, we have to move, and we have to get that done. So I think that's something I just wanna make sure that we talked about, and that, it wasn't something that we were necessarily thinking going into this. It was more, and as we talked about in other meetings, there was the coastal zone resiliency plan that has kind of been dovetailed into this. And we wanted to make sure that we captured it, because there's, some pretty heavy hitting things in that report, and some of the graphics we transferred here.
Yeah.
And that was on purpose, because
That's
of that. So I just wanna make sure that you guys picked up on that, and, when we're having discussions in public, whether it's, a forum like this, or just one-on-one with, different office hours, that, that's more of the message I think that we took away after we kind of put pen to paper.
So that's a really good example of a want versus a need, right?
Yeah.
So the need is, to your point, talking about the police station, you gotta move it. The jails are gonna get flooded, right? So,
Yeah.
I mean, that's a need. Square footage is, I would say, I'm going to, based on my 30 years of experience doing this, I'm gonna guess that there are some wants and needs in there that we could discuss, especially when it comes to the administrative office, any type of administrative function. You can have a discussion about what needs to be on-site versus off-site, and so there is that's where you're really gonna focus on clear requirements, I think.
Yeah, and I think, it's a kind of a double-edged sword. We don't wanna go into too much detail on that kind of thing. I think that maybe we definitely can be more clear about it, but I think it's more of an instance where we need to give the caveats that you're mentioning, and maybe drill down on a couple specifics, but we would like to think that, in 7 years, when we're getting to that specific item, things might be changed again, or they might not
They will
stay.
change.
And so this is kind of the baseline of
Yep.
what we're thinking,
Yes.
reasons why we're thinking it,
Yes.
which I think is what you're getting at.
That's exactly
And
what I'm
then-
getting at, and that's a better way of saying it, Chuck. By the time we go for the design, they will change.
They will.
The assumptions and the requirements will change. So that is a better explanation as to why we need
So we
that
intend-
bulleted list. Exactly, yes, perfect, yep.
I think there was one other major.
Well, may I?
Oh, the other major thing that I took away from this, sorry.
Go ahead.
Is the breadth and depth of reports that have already been done over the past 20 years.
Mm.
And so we're very specific about including those, and then when we do the big down version of this. So we talk about deep dives. I mean, if somebody really wants to deep dive in that, you can get lost for days. And I think that the thing that I took away as someone that hasn't been here that long, but been here long enough to see it, is, this stuff has been on the books for 20 years, some of it. There was a town-wide master plan that was only a few years old that talks about a lot of this stuff. And, the kind of scoreboard about what's been done has kind of, I wouldn't say is, where I would think we want to be. And so I think that's another thing that, as I talk to people in the community, or, people are asking me about certain things that they pick up, here, there, or everywhere, is that, this is stuff that has been around, and that, has been deferred a long time. I wouldn't
Repeatedly.
expect anybody
Yes.
would think a facility, that, a town-wide facility for, public response or DPW or otherwise would be, 50+ years without, kind of a major renovation. And now we're to that point where it's major renovation, but I think what we've said here is major renovation isn't gonna get it done and maintain the level of services that, we need to maintain. And so I think that's something that can be delved into a little bit more on the report side, but also something that I would be very comfortable telling, people that I talk to, what do you think? And this is where we're at, And I see it kind of similarly on the, the utility side, the pipe networks that we've been working with, I tell people all the time on the water side, everything's 120 years old. We got our money's worth out of it, but, we need to accelerate the pace of replacement in some cases. So, I think it's a little bit of that too. And that's what, I took away from kind of seeing it all in one document, kind of get that.
One thing I'd like to, we've talked about other demands on the town, specifically another elementary school. But one of the things that's hanging over us is our lack of affordable housing. And something that should be considered when you're assigning new buildings to new places is that a better place for housing, or is it a better place for a public safety building?
Right.
Well, Do you have a comment or?
I mean, this is the spoiler alert, there aren't many options in this town to put anything because of
There isn't
access
anywhere.
and topography and conservation restrictions. So I hear what you're saying. It's very hard to envision where something can go at
We
this
do
point.
now.
And redevelopment opportunities, I think, a lot of that comes in.
Yeah.
So I have a question, and I looked at all of the various town properties, and of course, you identified a couple up on School Street, one at the northwest corner of the section, the other one, which is the spots that being considered for DPW. Is that former spot there on the northwest corner, you said, yeah, we can get in there and we can build, is that buildable for a major town building?
The northwest, that is the
Yes.
former landfill site. In
No,
the
No,
northwest.
He's at the upper, he's
I'm at the exit, I'm right at the
There's
exit.
the one right across
He's on
the
School
exit.
Street.
I'm on School Street, right at the exit.
School Street where DPW.
Not the one where the
across street.
compost
is. Yeah.
The one
Yeah,
at
that-
the foot of Shingle.
Right, there's a group of 3 town-owned
Yes,
parcels right
You
there.
got a slide on
Yeah, I've
that.
got a side note on there, like,
you can get a road in there and
It's-
get some access.
it's not ideal, it's not really big enough, we
Yeah,
might
nothing's
be able
ideal,
to
baby.
make something work.
I'm just wondering.
For public safety,
Yes.
it's way outside of town.
But public
Yeah, exactly.
safety wouldn't really go that far because of response times, you don't want them that far out of
No,
town.
that's-
You want them in
yes.
town, that's
Yeah.
why in the grand scheme, we can skip ahead and we'll go to the punchline. You know, move the DPW up to School Street, police and fire go into Pleasant Street. And that, when police leave here, you get 2,500 square foot back to reinvent the town hall and move offices. And it frees up the fire department, and you could either sell that or you could renovate that into another facility for the town. And that's basically, you have to look at it as one whole process. It is,
Right,
they
that-
are individual projects, but it's a domino.
Yeah, I
And
mean, you have to empty one place before you can put
Right,
something else
so-
there.
correct. And I mean, that's basically my whole presentation is we gotta get that first domino to go. And with the compost facility now moving over to the landfill facility, that space is now open again.
So the reason though, and that's exactly what I'm asking you to do in a different way, right? Because the recommendation, like I said, the report is very well written, but the punchline is, buried on page whatever of the document, right? So if your recommendation, right? So you have a clear recommendation, a scenario. Our residents, in my experience, like to understand options. So you've outlined one recommended scenario. But are there others? And I think that's really what I'm pushing on, because the
I think-
residents like options.
I think the option, I mean, it's a little hard to say we're going to buy something that's not for sale.
Right.
But
Well-
that is an
But it's an
option.
option.
Exactly, and I tried to put in some private properties there that, a couple
Yes.
are for sale, a couple aren't for sale. But it's something to think about. I would,
Right, but I guess what I'm saying, that's one point. The only scenario that was outlined, right, was relying on existing town facilities and moving the dominoes, okay, town land. But there are other options, and they might require a different type of effort. So outlining scenarios just that are possible, given, the right stars aligning, I just think the residents would like to see some options, but I guess my big worry bead is, should we execute this recommended scenario, we're gonna have an empty building on School Street where the fire station was, right? So as part of our planning, we should already know what we're gonna do with that long before we empty it out. Because there are other towns and cities that I can think of which have done something similar, and with a school or something, and the building is sitting there empty for years.
yeah.
So just as part of the scenario, I'd like to see all outcomes clearly outlined,
Right, I'm certainly not disagreeing with you, I agree with you on all of that. My concern, and what I took away from this, and when the CVAP report came out, it definitely clarified some of what I was doing in my little shuffle game here with the properties, is that 75% of your critical infrastructure is in a flood zone.
Right.
And that's not really a good thing. So I started to move more towards moving these facilities out of the flood zones, which I think is the appropriate thing. So when you do decide to redevelop the fire department property, which I mentioned in there, it could be redeveloped for sale, you will have to bring it out of the flood zone.
Or you
But
sell
it
it,
would
let
make a
somebody else
terrific,
deal with
it would
it.
make a terrific,
Yeah,
council
but-
on aging hall.
But that might not have to
I
be done.
could see-
We could sell it and let somebody else deal with it,
Sure,
right?
absolutely.
So that's all I'm saying is I
Yeah.
think that.
Outline a few more options,
Yeah,
is what I'm hearing.
And some of them might include like leasing. If we need extra conference room space or meeting room space or storage space, how much of what we're discussing here, what's in this building, could be off-site storage, leased office space. I mean, I saw a very ownership-driven plan, and there's good reasons for that, but there are other options, and did we even look at it? And if we did and it's not feasible, that's good. But I just think in the facilities world that I'm familiar with, there's lots of options.
I think there's always the renovate in place or at the same location, certainly is an option. We talked a lot about that. When you start to look at the existing, and this could all be better explained perhaps in the report, when you start to look at the like town hall, for instance, renovating the police department at this location just doesn't seem reasonable, right? For all the issues that they have, it just seems unfeasible.
Right.
So there's a better connection I think we can
If we
make.
emptied a lot of the offices out, and freed up space, could we have the police here?
Could you move them up
You would,
above the
you'd
flood?
probably, I mean, I would recommend you move them up this
Yeah.
first floor.
But once again, it's an option.
Yeah, well, that's why, reimagining the whole facility is certainly an option.
Right.
When we started going down that road, we have it in there as a, renovating town hall, and there is definitely that option. I think, again, better explained, understood. The ideal situation that we kind of arrived at was a maintenance plan operation, so to speak. How do you maintain your facilities in a most efficient manner? So maintaining, and you don't need explanation on this, I'm sure, but constructing a new DPW facility. We talked about, hey, should public safety go out to School Street, 197 School Street? Too far out. The response times aren't great. So now you're not really missing a hitch or very limited disruption. Then you move DPW once the new facility's up and running. Now you're focusing on, that whole thing. So,
Understand, but it sounds like you have looked at other options
Yes.
that may not have been
Yeah.
mentioned. And I really feel our residents are gonna ask some of these same
Right.
questions, and it seems like you already have predefined answers, which is great. But to Ann's point, if you just reconfigured this building, could the police still stay here? That's definitely a question I think that people are gonna ask.
Not
Yeah,
without having nowhere
it's
to park.
worthwhile.
Well, I'm just saying that it's gonna,
You can park in a flood zone, it's not the end
Yeah.
of the world.
But my interjection here is, we've looked at putting good money after bad and trying to make something into what it simply cannot be. And we've deferred maintenance on many things, or flat out just not done what has been in several master plans. And again, we end up trying to retrofit, and ultimately, I think we end up spending more money, wasting money.
Yeah.
By not, and I understand that we want everybody who's interested to understand what we understand. But at some point, I think that we need to just cut some of the dialogue out, some that just doesn't make sense. And I think that that's why we hire the consultants, is to say what does make sense, what doesn't make sense. We're giving some framework to the information we would like to have available to us as well as the townspeople.
So
But
I-
we don't need every last bit
No,
of.
no, I agree with that, but I do think it is a board responsibility to push on the requirements and assumptions. That is a clear board responsibility, because it is just human nature. When you go to any department head, they're gonna tell you what they want, or they may phrase something as a need, but they may phrase it as a design outcome, a preconceived notion, not a requirement. And that's what our role is here to push to.
Yeah, and I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Can we maybe just, I think we've got a general understanding of the plan overall. Maybe you could walk us through the other big rocks.
Yeah, so Ron, assuming it's
Yes,
Mr. Draskell, has his hand up.
yes, please. Ron,
This is the too long. Yeah, it shows his hand up. We can't hear you, Ron. You're muted.
Are you asking me?
Yes. You had your hand raised?
Yeah, just on the square foot of the DPW facility, I saw you had 22 million, but you didn't tell me how many square, do we know how many square foot that is? And is that adequate or too much? Or I didn't see it in the report and maybe I missed it.
Don't know off the
Yeah,
top of my head.
I don't know, I don't know off the top of my head, I think it's about 18.
So one of the issues with the DPW specifically, is we had already done the siting analysis, basically seeing could we renovate in place versus School Street. And so for the purpose of, for Ron or for anybody listening, and I think the board's aware, but we already kind of had that in the can when we started on this. So admittedly, some of it got kind of, we didn't just copy and paste it over, we tried to take the highlights, but could certainly.
So how many square feet are you asking? Do you know this?
I don't recall off the top of my head, but we'll make sure it gets in the final draft.
Okay, thank you.
And just in terms of some of the square footage, correct me if I'm wrong, Chris, but the programming that we had for the new facilities were, we didn't get into tremendous level of detail on what a floor plan might look like or what the specific square footage would be. A lot of it was predicated on similar communities, similar size, newer facilities. So a recent public safety, and perhaps conservative, but I'd rather be conservative at the concept level and understanding what may or may not fit, or even in terms of costing. So that was a lot of it too, and I think that was an important.
Right, and you gotta be careful with standards when you're talking about a town as tiny as ours.
No, I know, it's not, there's no perfect matches, but
Yeah, right.
I think on the meeting, again.
10 minutes?
Yeah, I think so. Can I just say, so I think I hear what you guys are saying in terms of the additional write-up, and I don't have a problem with that. I think we'll get there. Ultimately, from my perspective, I think that I need you guys to be supportive, so I'm willing to say that we need to do whatever
Yeah.
you want to do. I do think we're getting to a critical juncture, though, of we have to do something. And so I think that's kind of where I come away from this is, now, we have a plan, we'll fine tune it a little bit, we'll beef it up a little bit in certain areas. But the thing that is driving this change, regardless of square footage and floor plans, is coming regardless of when we decide it's time. And so that's where I'm now looking.
I'm going to suggest that we discuss, there were two more or less immediate suggestions. One was to do an engineering work on the former Silver Star Stables.
The School Street.
Yeah, right.
I wasn't in the master plan.
You weren't born then.
Right. Oh, my neck burned, it burned something like, amazing. Anyway, make sure that is in fact a sound facility, figure out whether you need, what grading, so I think we can support requesting funds from the town meeting for that kind of work. And I think the other thing that you said should be done immediately is a harbor master office / bathrooms, where you have to work some with the MBTA to make sure that it's outside their footprint or acceptable in their footprint. And get public bathrooms in downtown.
Wastewater treatment plant, I think that's kind of
Wastewater treatment plant,
something we really.
initial hardening.
Yeah, so that's another one on the short list for sure.
So nothing on that short list is going to cut off anything else. So I just like a feeling of the board that we are supporting at least the 2024 recommendations. Or not.
You mean those two projects, which are
I
listed?
heard three, and I'm not
Three.
sure I'm clear on those,
Yeah,
so I'm not clear on that, no.
Okay.
So one project is getting a survey and a geotechnical investigation on the School Street property.
Or the
So
DPW, okay.
Yeah.
For
whatever-
anything, for anything,
anything.
okay, yes.
Just, so that was, I think we had $250,000
Mhm.
allocated. I didn't get prices for that. It could go down, could go up. But the other one was the Maritime Visitor Center was for, let's just call it year one. Take the date away from it. And that was for $1 million. But speaking with the harbor master, there's a lot of grants out there that he's very adept at.
To that point, were all of these, and you put all of these things together in a timeline that you said could be possible in $91 million. If you could put down what the grant possibilities are, just in general, for each one of those projects, and I know you put that in for the maritime, but for each one, are we on the hook for all the bucks? I assume that's kind of in the scope of this, or is it possible to get 20% or, whatever? Because people will want to know, because that really
For
affects the
project cost
tenants.
estimate.
So when we're talking about a brand new anything, like the visitor center, Harbor Visitor Center, that is something we don't have today. And therefore, a total cost of ownership, what does it cost to maintain? Becky, you say we have a history of not maintaining what we build. So no, I would not be in favor of that until I understand not just the potential build cost, but what's the potential TCO?
And how to build that in.
And for something like that, is that an opportunity, is there a corresponding revenue generating opportunity that can fund that so that?
Pay toilets. Sorry.
And I just was in London, they still have them, for God, I have no idea why. But harbor fees, whatever, is there a corresponding revenue generating opportunity so that that thing that we don't have today can come from somewhere other than tax dollars, the ongoing maintenance? That's what I think, I know some residents are gonna be asking those very questions, so I prefer we have some answers. But, there's the stuff we need, like keeping the stuff flowing through the pipes, DPW, public safety, but when we talk about something new that we don't have,
We don't have a public safety bills.
well, we have public safety, buildings, they're not together. So I just think we need the pencils to be extra sharp on that.
So in something like that, because I think we could identify a potential revenue stream that would be sort of high level at this point, right?
Anything.
But it's actually attaching revenue costs to it on an annual basis would be challenging.
True,
So
But-
if
but-
it's just simply stated that this could be a potential revenue stream for these reasons,
yes, yes.
then
But
it's.
a TCO, we should have some understanding of not just what it's gonna cost to build it, but what's the annual maintenance cost? And whose budget would that be? And that should be doable,
Yeah, it's.
right?
Well, that's a building that would be closed half the year. I think you have to make that assumption. It's not gonna be open.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
Unless
you
the
only have
commercial,
half
I
of
don't
it.
May.
know, I don't know.
No,
Most people take
harbor
a lot of
master would
showers
be there.
and
What?
Harbor
The harbor
master
master
would
No,
be
no,
there.
he's moving out of there. He would not be there in the winter.
Well, the fishermen, I mean, we don't, so these are some
Well, these are-
details,
these are
these
details
are
that we
the
have to
assumptions,
work
right?
out.
We all have different assumptions,
Okay.
and so that's why you need to outline the assumptions, yeah.
I'm a big fan because if we go for a grant, I want people to buy what we do this.
No, the people of Florida.
the timer.
Okay.
How much we have?
45 on time.
3:45 left.
2:45.
2:45 left.
45.
So to wrap up,
Yeah.
I think we covered pretty much all of my slides. We did have some cool graphics on there, but we'll bypass those, we'll leave them for next time. But I do think, you know, we're coming out of this with some better clarity of what you're looking for. Thank you for your comments. Please forward any more comments that you have, and you could probably go through Chuck or Greg, and they'll get them over to me. And we will incorporate or address your comments in our next version.
I have one question about that. I didn't remember any others, but I did note that the harbor master has a grant ready to go, teed up for this. I'd like to find out if this is something that it's 80% of the cost. I'd like to know if he needs to get that out right away, and if we need to get onto that as opposed to waiting too much longer on.
I don't know what the time schedule is, but I did talk to the harbor master, and he indicated that much to me.
Yeah, and I think that's something we need to
Already
be
budgeted.
aware of and not push, if that's something we're thinking of looking at, that we should get that answered sooner than later.
And the harbor has a lot of revenue, and if we use some of the revenue from revenue slips.
Right.
So just showing that
Right,
as a possibility.
Right, without that explanation, the residents may think, these are tax dollars going to our harbor visitor center.
Right.
What about, you know, the police department that's flooding, or what about this other thing? Just answer the question up front. We can have other revenue other than taxes supporting this effort. And grants,
Right, that
Are-
$1 million that I had in there,
Exactly.
Everybody hold
Don't
your breath.
move, Brian.
don't move.
If you were exhaling, you would
We'll get you back online. I'm sorry about that.
Maybe the budget should have.
Yeah.
Fine. That's a question. We should increase our Zoom budget.
Oh, we have quorum here, no budget conversations.
So we renewed it last week, but something happened in the renewal, like they didn't sign
My
us up.
guess is your meeting code probably changed.
Is that,
That's my guess. Is that the
Meeting code.
probably
Hmm.
changed and no one updated it.
Oh, that makes sense.
something?
See, aren't we glad he's back from vacation?
That's a guess, that's the best guess I got.
As good as any.
One more minute.
How's the baby, Chuck?
Good,
Sleeping?
sleeping's good.
Both of them sleeping?
Usually one or the other. Usually one or the other. You're asking for
I actually sleep with my eyes open. Usually at my desk.
Good to know.
No, no, we're good.
Good to know.
Lot of construction over there though, huh?
Yeah, the neighbor, that's a big one.
That's a big one, all
Been
right.
going for a while. My wife's not very happy. Long, 24/7 almost.
Hence no
She
sleeping.
was home a lot.
Okay, we're back.
okay,
Here we
we're
are.
back, and we were just wrapping up.
Right.
So we will take your comments, we will address them, we will submit another draft, or maybe a final. This was a final draft, so we'll see what we call it next time. But no, we appreciate your comments, thank you, and it's good to hear them. I'm glad you enjoyed the read.
Yeah.
At least it was an easy read, that was my
It
part,
was.
so.
That was good.
We'll get the information you're looking for, and we'll put it in there.
I'd just like to know if we need to revisit Bion's aspect in terms of the grant.
You can, I'll follow up with everyone.
Okay,
Have you come in and talk about that.
thank you.
Thank you very much. It was a
Thank you.
very-
Yeah.
I'm
Thank
sorry we stepped all over your talk.
No, it's okay, I preferred this, trust me. Talking
Good.
through a presentation is not my forte anyway.
Well, it was a very good report, and I'm sure your presentation would have been great fun.
We did have some good graphics.
We'll see it next time.
They do have it, so they,
We have,
oh, we'll get them the
Yeah.
presentation as well.
Speaking of that, Greg, can I have
Oh,
my
yes,
stick back?
you can have your stick.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Good luck with your next 45 minutes. We'd like to talk to
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
thank you.
Keep on pace, that's all.
Or something like that.
Our first discussion item is the open meeting agenda date.
And should we make a comment to people that we're just having, if we go off, we'll be back?
I don't know if they're sticking with us.
If
No.
it,
Yes, Becky, you are absolutely right. To those of us who are online, we are having trouble with Zoom. And every 45 minutes, we will go away briefly, and then we will come back. And so far, people seem to have been able to stick with it in spite of the discontinuity. Open meeting agenda, this is a meeting, we're not trying to come up with an agenda for it, we're trying to come up with a meeting where we can talk, where people can ask us virtually anything. We will not deliberate, but where we have clear answers, we can give clear answers.
via including Zoom, not just the sort of,
Yeah, no,
Meet
we're
in
not going to try and fit everybody in town who has a question for the select board into one room. Yeah. I don't, when, does anyone have a preference for a time?
I thought it was mentioned before, the window of time before our Monday meetings, which I kind of like.
I do too. I think if we come in and start, have an hour and
Okay, so you, okay.
5:30 to 6:30 kind of thing. Or it's just would,
Okay.
I think after work for people.
Five
Come
thirty
in.
is a little early for after work for a lot of people.
Well, I would give it a try, because all of our schedules are, you try and find another date,
Yeah.
and we're gonna get 5 people together. It's just not gonna happen, it's just too hard, so. But that's a time frame, I think.
And it also keeps us from having to, I mean, we have our Thursday evenings that if we need to discuss other things, we have that on the calendar, but,
So I guess my question was October, November,
um,
Yeah.
how about October, our first meeting in October?
Mhm.
let's see what,
October 2nd, I think that is.
And see how that goes.
I will not be here then. And I will be 4 time zones ahead.
You're likely to have that regardless. That one of us won't be here, but if are you saying you'd prefer to wait until,
Actually, if we had it at
Second.
5:30, it would only be 9:30.
9:30?
In the middle of June.
Oh. Can we push it to the second meeting in October?
16?
16?
Yeah.
Sure.
I may not be here, but I'm less critical than the chair.
Indeed.
Okay,
I just, we're going to have, but
so at 5:30 on the
16th.
16th, and could Tiffany let the world know that that's if
Yes.
that's happening.
So you want to keep it completely open, just take whatever questions
I-
come up.
If we're going to give it just an hour, I think it's going to be hard to get anywhere other than, if we say it's going to be about X, Y, and Z, I don't think we're gonna get to Y and Z.
I think we do open and then see.
Yeah.
We can determine,
See what
maybe the
comes out
following
of it.
month we decide.
Yeah, we don't know.
We're gonna drill down and get something important.
Question, do we have a fall town meeting on the calendar?
We do not yet.
So,
That would be on the list.
yeah, so I'm thinking by that time, we probably will have some idea as to what's on the warrant, what warrants we'll have.
Articles,
So
Articles,
certainly, I
excuse me,
think at your
articles on
next
the
meeting,
warrant.
you need to talk a bit about that, and you need to talk about dates. So yes. Certainly by the 16th, you should.
I know you said this should be open and no particular theme, but it seems like we
That would
knew what was
drive
gonna
it.
be on the warrant, that would drive the conversation,
No.
could drive the
Let's leave it open
conversation,
for
but maybe
now,
not,
and
yeah,
then
we'll see.
we can tighten it up later.
Right.
Let's set the, grab the day,
Yeah,
let's grab the
right,
time,
yeah.
we'll figure out what it's gonna be later.
Yes.
Mhm. So October 16th at 5:30 gives plenty of time to get notice out
That's
there.
right. Deb, you'll be here with milk and cookies?
Pumpkin spice, probably.
Mhm.
The next item is additional flagpole. And I'm going to start by saying, so far, we've had one organization that's been interested in having, and we've been able to accommodate it. And
In my opinion, is we've spent way too much staff time on this already. And that it was a nice idea, but I don't see the need for it.
Okay, my perspective, I still would like to see the second flagpole, just on principle. Because I just think a commemorative flag should not be on a flagpole that is in a
That's a discussion we can have
veterans
later.
memorial.
Right.
Okay, I revisit that later. Right now, for once a year requests, no, my opinion is we're done. I'm done anyway.
So I don't think the research that the team did was wasted. I think it's nice to have that option.
Mhm.
Should we start to get more
Mhm.
organizations coming and asking? If we get one more organization ask, it's worth revisiting the discussion. At this point, I don't see the need to go forward with installing it. But I like the fact that we did the research, have a viable option that we can, looks like we could install it pretty quickly. So I
Mhm.
prefer to leave the status quo until such time as we need to spend the money.
Public outreach and engagement strategies.
So this is, you identified, the desire for stronger engagement and more public outreach as one of your priority goals. And as part of the governance project has been discussed, and we have certainly a number of big items, big topics that need very thorough community dialogue on. MBTA zoning certainly comes to mind as probably one of the bigger ones. Facility plan may not rise to that same level, but it's still a big topic. How we deal with our budgeting needs, particularly with the school district and what that future looks like is another large topic. The impacts of climate and how we're going to be adapting and responding to those challenges. These are all big topics, and I think they warrant good community discussions to help come to solutions that can be supported ultimately at town meetings, where ultimately we make those decisions. So tonight, we had hoped to have a little more detail for you. Something came up with Susan Beckman's schedule. She wasn't able to join us tonight. So I think it makes sense to not dive as deep tonight as I had originally thought. But again, I think we need to be thinking about this plan and aim for middle of the fall kickoff. Certainly the MBTA zoning will have its own set of outreach efforts. Tiffany has put together a very detailed plan for that. And I think it could serve as a very good model for other topics. The question then becomes, do we pursue multiple outreach efforts on multiple topics at the same time? What's the capacity of the town and internally, and your own capacity to be dealing with multiple topics? That's something we should think about and discuss at a future meeting as well. So I think for this evening, I think it suffices to have you have perhaps a 5-10 minute discussion now on if you have some preliminary thoughts, but it may make sense for one or two of you to help form a little subgroup that works with a couple of staff members, three staff members, a finance committee member perhaps, to work on this outreach campaign that I think we will need on a series of topics.
Maybe somebody from the planning board?
Yeah, because of the MBTA zoning for sure.
Well, and their overall zoning
Zoning, yeah,
initiative,
efforts in
which kind
general.
of dovetails with it.
Yes.
Can we safely assume that this open meeting, that in
That's
fact
part
is
of it. Absolutely.
I mean, maybe
That's
it becomes a
that's
core
piece.
part of it.
Yeah, that's definitely an element. Yes, I would agree.
I also think, I would like to make sure that whatever we implement is something that gets integrated into a normal routine, so that
Yes.
we don't set something up and then when we have
I agree.
changeover, it disappears.
Not even changeover, you set it up and then,
It's not utilized. Well, exactly, and that it's reviewed periodically to make sure that what we're using, for example, social media of whatever kind, is current and the most widely used by people, so that
That's
we're
it.
being effective.
Excellent point. So then the way to get that is, who is the process owner that will work with the
Mhm.
select board and the other boards? Who on your team is gonna own this?
So Tiffany is front and center. And then Sue and Debbie, which I haven't spoken to about, but.
Same crew, okay. So I just think it's important to understand who the process owner is and that she understands what her accountabilities and what we have as expectations for her, which Becky so nicely outlined, right? Because if she's the process owner, then she would be pulling on us, here are some dates, when do you wanna meet, what do you wanna talk about? And she would work with, whomever to outline the plan, right?
And that's also in that person's job description. It is clear and defined.
Yeah, so that definitely is in Tiffany's job description. We need to boost her hours in order for her to have time to do it all, but yes.
Are we looking for volunteers for this group now?
If you're ready for that, that would be helpful.
I'm happy to
I'll do it,
volunteer for that.
I'll do it.
And did anybody else want to? Am I taking it away from Brian? You love communication.
I love meetings.
Yay, John, you and
Committees.
me.
Okay,
Great.
I don't think it's gonna be a heavy lift, this is,
No, but it sure will be a critical one.
Yes.
Because I was talking to someone last night who was on the jazz festival and they said they tried, in terms of communication, the outreach, and said regardless of how much they put it out there, they still didn't get as many people as they had hoped. What was that?
We're losing, we have
Another 45
10
minutes?
minutes on
that.
Anyway, so I think it's pretty, all right, that's
I
by
don't
me.
pay that electric bill either.
we want to move that town meeting up sooner than we thought.
So,
That's right.
Okay, the next item is the Board of Library Trustee membership increase, which, as you saw in your packet, we can't increase it by 1 or 2, we have to increase it by 3, and there are only 3 now, and that would be disruptive to, so, perhaps the library trustees can come back to us in the future when they have been working with the 3 of them and come back with their recommendation.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let them kick the tires a little bit harder on this topic
Can they
and
go
come
with
back to
alternates?
you.
Can they go with like 1 or 2 alternates? Or do they have to be 3?
Yeah, that seemed like a strange, that's a state,
That's
Law.
it's a state law.
man, that
I-
seems.
Can't even,
I was not aware of that state law.
Here's
until
a
we
question.
found it.
yeah,
Here's a question. Now, the library trustees are elected. Must all members be elected, or can some be appointed?
No, they have to, it's all,
We can appoint replacements.
you can appoint replacements.
Okay, but they have to get their,
But then eventually they have to be
So-
elected,
so when I.
unless you change to an all-appointed board, but that's,
Right.
When we listened to the discussion at the last meeting, as I recall, the desire to increase the headcount was to get more workers to help them. And there are other ways
correct,
to get workers to help them achieve their objectives without adding to the elected board.
right.
And so personally, I'll tell you right now, I'm not terribly interested in going to a board of 6, but I would certainly like to hear what they have to say after you relay that information to them.
Yeah, I think they have some reservations as well.
that's a lot of people to try and get through.
Yeah.
And,
But let them-
it's not up to us to establish committees for them.
Correct.
Right, they would have to do that.
So, I think it makes sense to have them, like I say, do a little deeper dive on this amongst themselves, and then come back to you with additional thoughts.
That one was relatively easy. Greg, would you like to read the school collaborative?
Sure, so I think most of you are aware that there's been an informal group, chairs typically of the select boards from both towns, the finance committee chairs or designee, meeting with school administration for basically sort of serving as an advisory, informal advisory group to the school administration. So that's allowed under open meeting law. It doesn't come under the open meeting law directives in terms of posted meetings and agendas, et cetera, because it's an informal advisory group to an administration that could be making those decisions without that input, but it's helpful to have the input. So that has been functioning for a long time, and it predates my arrival to town, so.
No.
So it's been in place for a long time. I think this past year, there were some concerns about the format and that it wasn't following the community law, and that there was some concerns expressed about that. And but there's still a desire to keep the informality and sort of the trial balloon nature of the meetings, I guess is how I would put it. It allows for a forum to explore ideas before presenting them to public bodies or to the public at large. So there was concerns about, how could we share more information from the collaborative? And so the two major changes for this year going forward. One is to create a summary of those collaborative meetings to share with the different boards, finance committees, select boards, school committee, and anyone else who who wants to see them. Once we share it with any one board, then they're a public document, and so that's fine. And then the other change is to hold what I'm calling summit meetings with the two sets of select boards, the two sets of finance committee boards, and the school committee. So those 5 groups get together 3, maybe 4 times a year to discuss challenges, issues, concerns, ideas for the district moving forward. And so the targeting that can work for the majority of schedules. It will be hard to get everyone's schedule nailed down, but the first one they're looking at September 19th as the first meeting of the 5 groups. That's a Tuesday evening. School committee normally meets that night. They would meet an hour from 6 to 7 and do their regular business, and then from 7 to 9 would be the five board meeting. And for this initial meeting, the goal would be to just outline what are the key challenges people see going into FY25. So it would be helpful for you as a board to talk about what you see as those key challenges prior to the 19th, so we can do that at your meeting on the 18th. But clearly, sort of the main focus here is, okay, we went through a pretty exhaustive budget process this last winter and spring. Essex was not able to get approval for an override, and so the budget was reduced, and we're basically in the same situation for 25. Will an override be a possibility? And if not, then what does that mean for the district and its budget and its programming?
Question, Greg?
Yeah.
As I recall, I thought the school committee was going to be doing some strategic work during the summer to discuss some, they talked about structural or strategic changes, and they were gonna be doing that work during the summer. Has any of that work been done?
I don't think it has advanced too far. Some are trying, but I would say, I think it's fair to say it has not advanced to the point of presenting something new to the
I think it started.
Do I think it started?
Yeah.
I think it has started. I don't think it has started for the full committee, for the full school committee. I think some individuals have been pursuing some ideas, but I don't think it has advanced to any proposals of full debate.
So is the 19th supposed to be an objective to start to do that? Because I was kind of under the impression that Kathy is that they'd come and they'd say, well, this is how far we are along, and I'm not saying they got to be a long way along, but at least there's some progress that's been made, what they can or cannot do.
I think
And none of that's happening.
I think they would be prepared on the 19th to say here are the challenges as we see them, and here's the magnitude of the problem in terms of the budgetary.
So on the 19th, we're only gonna hear about the scope of the problem, not necessarily
I think you'll see.
brainstorming on
No, I
potential
think
solutions.
there'll be an
Okay.
opportunity to do that, yes. There'll be an
Oh, well,
opportunity to brainstorm
on the 19th.
on the 19th.
I was wondering if the school committee would do any of that brainstorming before
Before.
the 19th, so that we could,
I can ask, I don't know.
I think it's worth asking, because if I go back and look at those meeting recordings, I'm almost positive they talked about some summer sessions where they were gonna, look at some strategies, they have some decisions to make about some of their programming and facilities.
I think they're looking for input from the two towns as to what the two towns feel they can support from a dollar perspective.
I think that in any budget discussion, those two things can go in parallel,
I agree.
right? So, we would have to learn how to all walk and chew gum at the same time.
So with this, who will actually be attending from the various?
So it's designed to be all members of those
Everybody.
5
That's what,
boards.
and just, if we're discussing, how is it that this is not?
This is a meeting with an agenda and,
This is a public meeting,
public meeting.
Yep.
yes. That's a public meeting with an agenda, with no minutes will be taken.
I just wanted to make sure that was
Yes.
clear.
And
Thank you.
where is it gonna be held?
We held at the school, at the high
At
school.
the high school?
Yeah, probably in the cafeteria.
Could they get some chairs instead of this meeting?
Yes. yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
thank you.
So then that would be followed by 3 plus or minus additional summit meetings as the budget process progresses.
In the middle of the meeting, you put budgets on and a follow-on analysis of what happened.
It was only like 3 months, right? 4 months? When are they, in January, they come up with a budget or what?
Yes.
I mean, it's the end of the year, through the end of the year. So
Well,
much time.
so there'd be this initial one, one probably either late December, early January, and then another one right before town meeting, and then one post-town meeting.
Okay, well, I think there should be something else going on later on in the fall to know where things kind of stand and problems. I would have hoped they would have done some of that already in this meeting in September. All right, let's hear a little bit about what the problems are. Maybe you're all in loggerheads, but I mean, we need to know this. I think we all know we got a deficit. We know what the problems are in general, but we're not the specialists on school committee stuff. We're not that close to it. For brainstorming, we need to know a little bit more of the machinations.
Right, I think the school would say, we can do a program however you want based on the dollars you give us. So they're looking from you to say, here are the dollars we think we can afford. And you're looking from them to say, well, we want you to be creative and tell us some new approaches you school committee have for spending our dollars.
Mm-hmm.
So this is where you need to sit down and just sort of make that clear.
I'm trying to start
each other.
this earlier than,
I understand it as early as possible.
and I think
That's a
that's
great idea.
wise.
There is a summary of the most recent collaboration meeting, which is just having the last of the.
A few more tweaks to the edits and we'll get that to you.
And
That'd be great.
And that'll,
Yeah.
All
that'll,
right.
Something enough to
Some
speak.
that'll
backgrounder.
help
We
set
need
the
a
stage
background.
for the meeting.
Yeah.
Because in it asks some specific questions about.
And we're gonna
budget.
discuss this on the
On the
18th before.
The collaborative group, this is like a subset of folks?
Yeah, it's
So-
the 2 town administrators.
Yep.
The superintendent, the director of facilities and, everything else.
The business manager, yeah.
The business manager. The heads of the 2 finance committees,
Okay,
chairs of the 2 selectmen. Sometimes somebody can't come, somebody stands for approximately
well,
that group.
fine.
Okay, so the action from this is to be sure that we have a good discussion on the 18th. And you get the materials.
Yep, we'll get you that ahead of time. And if some additional information that we can glean, then we will certainly share that as well.
Okay, liaison updates.
Mine will be next time.
I got nothing other than what we saw in the email today. Haven't talked to Fox Smith yet. I can tell you they had pretty good weekend.
Yeah, is there any motion on the, pickleball?
I have not heard. It was supposed to happen in the last couple of weeks, but I didn't
Right, and
hear anything.
I wasn't able to catch up with Cheryl this afternoon to find out.
So I would have thought she would have reached out to me or Greg if it was gonna happen, so.
My committee meetings are next week, so nothing to add on.
Okay. I didn't go to any school committee meetings. There's a limit to how much I do.
Yeah.
John?
The only comment, I spoke with Chuck and Sue Taylor in DPW. The water bills that went out with the frequently asked questions, we got no questions or comments.
No.
The 2,000 people and nobody came back.
So, I'm sorry, just question, clarifying question, when you say the water bills,
On August, mid-August.
the proposed water bills with new price, what
No.
water bills are you talking about?
I'm talking about the bill that everybody got in mid-August for the water that they used in April, May, June,
Right,
okay? There was an FAQ in that,
right,
a document
Yes,
that
I
had the
saw
top
that.
9 questions.
Yep.
And that did not prompt any inquiries. I will say that Chuck was a little bit concerned, and so was Sue, that there'd be a number of people who would call in and say, well, what's going on here? And there were nothing was prompted based on the FAQs.
okay, so where are we with the actions taken from the last discussion?
So it's on your agenda for next meeting
Yes.
Next week, okay.
Next week will be
to talk about the rates again.
the rates.
Okay, so they've completed the actions that we asked from the last meeting.
The actions are really to make sure that everybody knew what was going on.
Well, we had some very specific actions around, because there was no pro forma modeling on the businesses. That was one, the schools, and also we asked, I thought, if some, not pretend bills, but, could you take a homeowner's water usage from this last quarter?
That will be
and-
in the rates.
and apply the new rates and see what their bill would actually be. So was that not done? That's
The,
very specific, I'm trying to
No,
remember.
not done on a specific basis unless people ask for it, but the new rates will have a paragraph as to how those living units will be handled. So in other words, not only is it X dollars per 1,000 gallons, but if it is a multi-unit place, it is divided by the number of units and then the tiers are applied.
But they did complete the actions on the businesses, and
No, nothing has been done on that. I think we're gonna see what
I
happens.
don't know what we're talking about in a couple of weeks, I guess, because we had
Well,
some
we're
very
talking about
specific actions.
the residential, talking about the residential.
No, well, so
No, there
the,
was
so
an
the,
action.
the feeling was that,
Yeah.
that there would not be a special rate for commercial.
Yeah.
That the commercial impact would not
Right.
be,
Right, there was a
Significant.
feeling that there was no impact on commercial, but we wanted to see someone just take a look and see what, especially the restaurants that use a lot of
Right,
water.
right.
And so that's my question, has that been done?
yes.
It has been done, okay.
We know what their volumes are.
Well, what their cost difference would be. So, okay, and that was the question that was asked. and
Yeah, they are,
we need to-
they're not
So
big volume.
the analysis said that the impacts were not.
Okay, does that include, Essex County Club? Does
No,
that
there are
include
four large consumers.
And the schools?
Schools, it's just one, they are a large consumer. We did not deal with the schools in particular. We can deal with them separately, but that doesn't.
I'm sorry, I
Yeah.
thought
We had some
one of the
actions.
things that we went through the last time we talked about this was that we wanted a package that described how everything was going to work. We didn't want, they'll just adjust this here and they'll adjust this here. I want,
The residential ones have been taken care of in that. The schools, they're about, I don't know, there are a lot of different accounts. It has been looked at, and there are maybe 20 accounts accounting for over 1 million gallons a year. The schools have not been contacted one way or another. It would affect them.
no, I don't think we need to contact the schools.
Yeah.
I want a proposal that handles all the water rate users, all the water
Okay.
users, not just residential.
Right, wait, there were some very specific actions out of that last discussion, honestly, it's worth.
Remember the schools thing?
Just watching the YouTube again, in the last 5 minutes, we went and asked for
Okay,
certain
we'll
things in
check and
writing.
see what the story is
You know,
with that.
To Kathy's point, I do recall that I thought we were gonna give them
like a pro forma
a pro forma,
bill.
this is
yeah.
what your bill is, this is what your
For an
bill
agent,
would have
yes,
been.
that's what it was.
Okay, to demonstrate that in fact, everyone, 80% of the people are looking and say their rates are going, everything's going down.
Show facts, you know, what's the.
That was a discussion I'm convinced we
I
had.
think we just need to go back and look at that YouTube, the last 5 or 10 minutes of
Okay.
that discussion had some very specific actions.
I mean, for 2,000 users, this is what your bill is and this is what it's gonna be?
Well, you produce,
Honestly, back in the day, I could have written that program in 30 minutes.
No.
So it's,
That's pretty hard.
No, it isn't.
no, it isn't.
I mean, the program exists, but
Well, it's not hard to generate the number. It's a little bit of work to send that out to every household.
yeah,
But you're already sending a water bill
it was
to
gonna be
every
included
household.
with it.
And it was supposed-
That's fine, we can do that the next time around.
Okay, I think it would, if we don't have time to send that out to the residents, I think it is at least something that we should, this is a small town. We could take a look at the report. They could do it before and after and write the program such that here are the people with the, you know, biggest differential, you know, and just, we need facts. We have a lot of concerns, valid concerns, and we weren't able to communicate to the residents their.
How much?
90 seconds.
I don't think we have a lot, I think we have a few.
We think, but it's real easy to get the data. It's, like I said, I wish I was.
we have all the
working
data.
3 days ago.
For all 2,000 accounts for 10 years.
Real easy.
And the vast majority aren't fixed,
No, I want to know,
but
everybody. It's not, I think I'm not alone, I'm sorry.
No,
I'm
we-
saying I,
We asked for some very
We'll
specific
look at the
things,
minutes
please
and
go
we'll give
back,
you
yeah.
that list and you can decide
Okay.
what you want to do. That's fine.
we are about to take a break while,
we are.
while we.
We'll have to
restart
reboot.
the meeting.
We're close to the end.
So we'll have that information though in advance of the 18th.
We need that before the 18th.
Mhm.
Otherwise, there's not much to talk about.
Yeah, we won't have that information sent to everybody.
No, but to us.
No, but for us
Yeah.
to see the report.
Maybe we're not being cut off.
I'm just saying less than 1 minute, but it's not.
Okay.
It doesn't matter. No,
There we go.
There we go.
Camera,
Again.
5 or 10 minutes.
Right.
Three-dimensional kind of guy.
Time for a quick IO break.
Yes, like everybody stand up and walk around.
Nice little breaks, right?
So we really only have 2 more items that we need to do. So,
For those who haven't noticed, we don't have the minutes, so I think we should approve them. Okay. Okay, we are back. The minutes are, nobody has seen them yet, so we're not going to take them, may we take them out of the consent agenda?
I move
Motion
to,
to,
Motion to remove.
motion to remove the minutes of August 7, 2023 from tonight's consent agenda.
Can I ask that we also include the approval of the intermunicipal agreement, which we don't have either? And the amendment.
Motion to remove the municipal agreement, which we do not have yet.
Is there a second?
Second?
Becky,
Yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Kathy,
yes,
Anne says yes.
And Johnson says.
Excellent. Okay, short term, this is in the consent agenda. Is this, do we want to discuss or just approve the short-term rental licenses and the library director?
I would like to ask some questions regarding the short-term rentals.
Okay, then let's remove that from the consent agenda as well. Move to remove short-term rental licenses from the consent agenda. Second.
Well, can we just approve the hiring of the library director?
Okay. Is there a move to ratify the hiring of the library director?
I would like to make a motion to heartily approve ratifying the hiring of library director. What a great background.
Yeah, no, we're excited to have Cynthia join us, and looking forward to her start. And, yeah, has this excellent background, interviewed well, had good interaction with the staff and some public, so, yeah, it's all full steam ahead. So,
What's the effective date, or when is retirement?
first of October.
Oh, okay, so soon.
John,
Yes.
Anne says yes. Kathy,
yes.
Brian,
Yes.
Becky,
Yes.
excellent. So, short-term rental licenses, you said you had questions.
Ron Mastrangelo has his hand up.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ron.
Yeah, just a question on a special town meeting. You know, the planning board has a couple of bylaw changes, possibly, or 3 of them, 2 of them are problematic, but we have the definitive process to have a public hearing, advertise it 3 weeks, you know, gotta get 3 weeks, and it just would be helpful to know if we're going to have a special town meeting, because it would kind of prompt us to continue this movement on the bylaw changes. Any idea when we would know if that's happening? The planning board voted not to have a special town meeting just for our items. So if you guys have something and that we're gonna go forward with that, it would be nice to know.
Thank you. I think we said we would discuss that at our next meeting. Is that enough, Ron, is that enough time, the October?
I'll defer to Greg on that. It
So-
depends on when we have to get the language in and, have the public hearing. There's a lot of, process items that have to take place.
Right, so if the decision is to hold a special town meeting, anticipating early to mid-November timeframe, and so that would place, middle of October, the deadline for having materials ready. And then you finalize the warrant at your last meeting in October, and then we get everything printed up and posted, and et cetera. For special town meetings, it's a 14-day posting. It's nice to give a little more time if we can.
Okay.
So,
Is like the planning board enough time to do what they need to do? With
It's
at
tight.
least one public.
Well, yeah, that's a good point. I don't know what the board's gonna decide, which way we're gonna go, but, I know there's one that possibly could be put on a special town meeting, the other two may be problematic. I don't know what the board will decide, we'll talk about it at our meeting on Monday. But, I assume we should just keep moving forward with a public hearing and advertisement and moving forward on what we wanna do. It's just, it's just a lot of stuff we need to get done in preparation.
Rick, do you have anything that you think would be on that warrant? Other than the planning board? Curious.
So right now, we have a couple of small things that we could add, if we were going to have one. I would say, but I don't have anything that is compelling to say we have to have a fall town meeting. As I sit here today, that could change in the next 2-3 weeks, but I'm not anticipating a big need beyond planning and zoning.
Those small things are not time sensitive in terms of.
They can wait till the annual. They're not crucial to get done at the fall.
And the same is true for our stuff, but so.
So I think
Just-
the discussion might be, how many little pebbles might we either want to defer? Could they accumulate to be so much that we would not be able to get a annual town meeting done in one night? You know, what's the trade-off?
Right,
If you have too many small pebbles for a fall town meeting, you might not get enough people to show up, so.
Right, so that's
Yeah,
the
that's the
calculus that we have to go
calculus, okay.
through.
Well, one thing we've learned is we don't wanna choke the town with a million different things at one time, but that's fine. I mean, we like to do it in small steps, so.
So what is the one change that?
We are pursuing the senior housing bylaw. That seems to be moving forward. There was some, change in the ADU law wording, but we think that might be I'll see what the board decides on Monday. It might be problematic from what we heard from town council. And then the floodplain bylaw, I don't think we're ready, but I'll let the board decide if we want to move forward with that.
Ron, in the spring meeting, of course, the MBTA plan is going to be before will be on the warrant. Would you put something in from the planning board along with that? Because there's a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, that's another thing that maybe needs more time. I don't think we'd be ready in the spring, but that's up to the task force, where they're going with that.
The MBTA zoning changes have to come from the planning board.
But, and they have to be on the April
No,
warrant, I think.
Not necessarily.
no, you could do a
Not
special.
necessarily.
You could do
We
it
can
later
do a
than
special.
that, but I mean, you want to be in a position that if it doesn't fly, you can do something to vote later, but you can schedule a meeting anytime.
Yeah.
All right.
Understood.
Takes 14 days.
I think it should be a standalone too. I mean.
Oh, that's
I
my,
don't understand the planning.
no, you don't want
Zoning,
to,
other questions of zoning.
unplanned, that's the only zoning issue you want to have standing.
I would agree.
So, yeah, there's some,
So we're going down in detail here on the topic that's not on the agenda.
Right.
So I just
Yeah.
right.
caution
It's
us a little bit.
My question is just, the sooner you can let us know that there's gonna be something in November, the more we can, plan. But we're planning to move ahead, so,
So, yeah, Ron, I think the answer is
We'll know next.
keep moving with the assumption we will have one. And then a final decision will be forthcoming in the next few weeks.
In 2 weeks.
I think
so
it's-
we will advertise for a public hearing and move forward in the time frame that we need to make the dates.
Yeah, I would anticipate you wrapping up your work, no later than that third week of October.
Okay. Understood, thank you. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Ron.
Thank you, Ron. Okay. Now, back to Becky's questions about the short-term rentals.
Well, it's,
Everybody's questions.
yeah, are the people applying, are they online? Are you
That's how
able?
that's how we filed them, yes.
No,
They here.
are they
here?
here?
I don't know who's here for that.
You've got Dominic Maruzzi and then,
I don't have.
Christine
names. I
Matrano
have-
Barber, who's a repeat.
Mhm.
And then the other one on Union, David Demeter.
I don't have names for folks. I have some initials and oh.
Okay, anyone who is here supporting their application for a short-term paying guest accommodation license, please put your hand up. No hands appear.
Okay, no hands appeared. My questions, there were a couple of things. One is, on two of them, the insurance runs out very soon, and I think is that something that we have a tickler on to have them submit?
I can find out.
And then, the other is parking. The one on Union, there's no parking designated. And so they're supposed to be parking on either Norwood or, Washington. And is that of any concern? The other is on School Street with the same situation. They say they provide one parking space off street, but it's 3 units. So where do the other people park? It's just mostly parking in congested areas that my concerns are. We've gone over all this with the house on Norwood, which is Christine Matrano Barber, and she has off-street parking. So I didn't have questions for that unit.
Actually, when you bring up a very good question on our license application. It says, describe what parking is available for guests. But it doesn't say, so the guest is actually the person who would be living there,
The renter,
the renter.
Mhm.
Okay,
or the short-term renter.
the short-term renter.
So we're not. My question with the one who has the short-term rental in addition, or 2 of them, in addition to other units, is when they're providing a spot to a short-term renter, is that taking a spot already designated for a long-term renter? I'm just saying, are we congesting our on-street parking further? So those are my questions for the 2 other applicants. I'm fine with approving the Christine Matrano Barber because again, she's been before us, does not appear there have been any changes with hers. Other than my question to Debbie, is she someone who was prompted to apply for the short term? Any of these 3, or any of the 3?
54 Union and the 64 Norwood were approved in 2021. The new one is 2026 Rear School. I found
School.
that on Airbnb.
Okay. And with all this, it's the same unit that is on Union, do you know?
I'll look back at the last, but he said he didn't know he had to get a license annually.
Okay, all right.
So it's been rented before, didn't realize it was an annual price. Okay. But the Airbnb one is a first time.
Well, the 26 school is the one I found online.
They're all they all
I'm sorry,
do
yes,
short-term
the-
rental.
26 school. So do we know how long that's been rented without a license?
I can look back. No, I didn't look to see just trying to get them licensed.
Mm-hmm. Well, if that's the case, then I would not have a problem approving the two that have been approved prior. But I'd like to ask this one about
Okay.
the off-street parking, unless nobody else has a concern with that.
No, it is School Street.
Hmm?
It is School Street.
Okay, so could I have a motion to approve the short-term rental licenses for 64 Norwood and 54 Union?
So moved.
Second?
Meeting ready? Becky?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
John, yes.
Excellent. And we will defer the 26R School Street, until we determine what the parking impact is. Is that,
Well, he does say one off-street spot, but
He does, but
it's not specific.
I just think that I would like to ask this first-time applicant who was chased down,
Come before the board?
to come before the board. As, the others have done previously.
is, so we will put that on for the 18th, or whatever.
18.
Okay. Town administrators report.
I can be brief. Couple of things, just some updates on succession planning. So I have been speaking to all department heads about their interest to their own future goals. Had one who expressed his interest, possibly, tentative, in pursuing the town administrator role in the future. And we also have one in the police department that's very interested in pursuing the chief position there. And so we're talking to them about different trainings that they can be doing and pulling them into some activities as to get a flavor of the work. So wanted to provide that update. And then one other thing, yeah, just as we get closer to the budget process, I think it would be helpful, either as part of this meeting, a regular meeting, or as a special meeting, just to revisit goals and priorities, where we stand and how that potentially impacts the budgets. So I think that would be helpful to do in the next month or so. And so make that suggestion and see if we can find, again, either time as part of a regular meeting or set aside a special meeting time to do that. So in terms of meetings coming up, we have the Rotunda Forum on the 14th, and then your next regular meeting on the 18th, and then the school summit meeting on the 19th. We're moving into October, regular meeting would be the 2nd and the 16th.
With regard to the Rotunda meeting, I think you had mentioned that the engineering firm was putting together a model.
Yeah, so we will have those for the 14th.
Will we have it before that?
Yes, yeah, I have seen the draft of it.
Good.
And I think you'll be pleased with what you can do with it. You can basically fly around. It's a three-dimensional computer image that you can
Great.
change the angles and change the tide. So I think you'll find it
Okay, in
informative.
winter versus summer.
Because it was very wet yesterday. Very wet.
With the high tide. Is that-
Yes.
yeah.
And it was no spectacular high tide, it was a regular high tide, and its feet were very wet.
It was.
So I don't know, if look at your calendars or get back to us and what some dates possible. Or do you want to do it as part of a regular meeting and set aside 45 minutes or an hour?
I don't have strong feelings either way about that.
I think, given the number of meetings that we've got in the next 2 weeks, we probably better put it in for October 2nd. And just make it part of our regular meeting.
Yep, happy to do that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. There's one more motion.
Well, we do have the FEMA correspondence, do we have to,
Yeah, put in there as an FYI, basically.
Mhm.
They do have some revisions to the maps. The planning board, as Ron mentioned, is taking a look at our floodplain zoning, which really needs an update, a rewrite. They are working on that, and that'll incorporate the new maps as well. These FEMA maps won't be finalized until early next year.
I gather there's a possibility of contesting some of their
Yeah,
findings.
that was the purpose of their letter.
Correct. So we did that a few years back. Some of the modeling that they had used, we felt was not accurate. I'm not aware of similar concerns this time around.
some individuals, if an individual has a concern and wanted to pursue that, they would have to be made aware of the last public posting date, right?
Right.
Because they would have 90 days. How do we put this on the website? How do we make?
Yeah, we could certainly post this letter and make it, and have Tiffany.
I just
Push it
think
out
that
a bit,
it's,
so-
if we just put it where it's accessible to townspeople, let them know in case somebody's,
The letter or the maps?
what we received, the determinations letter, so that they know if
Well, and if they
they
can
want.
pursue looking at the maps.
Yeah.
We can help people find those maps
Right.
as needed.
Are the maps available online anywhere?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. On our website, their website?
It's in the
I think
the
we
URLs in the
refer
letter.
people to their
yeah, the
website.
links are in
Okay,
the,
fine.
not always easily, but yeah.
Well, could we, if we're putting something out, telling people that this happened, could we include the URLs to get?
Yes.
Yes. It's on those, yeah. Would you like a motion?
Yes.
Motion to adjourn.
Second,
Becky?
Yes, thank you.
yes.
Kathy?
Yes.
Anne says yes.
Yes, and welcome back.
Yeah, woo-hoo.
Yeah, sudden immersion.
Indeed.
Did that twice on in the water.
What, 3 weeks?